Bish,
Bash.
bosh.
Here we go out of the parks. Today bringing you a slightly different video from usual. Obviously the same as the last video due to what's going on in the world at the moment. But today we're actually going to determine what is the best ride at one of our favourite parks in the UK, Chessington World of Adventures.
Well, we had a little discussion to eliminate all rides other than these contenders for the top 5 best rides at Chessington. These include the Vampire, Dragon's Fury, Tiger Rock, Scorpion Express and Gruffalo's River Ride Adventure.
Yeah, so we did this by looking at a few different factors, the theming, so how immersive it is, how good the queue lines are and stuff like that. We looked how enjoyable the rides are by looking at their re-rideability, layouts and fun levels before coming to an overall score out of 5.
Right, so let's get into it. So starting off with the Vampire, we're going to be talking about the queue line theming. I think it's very atmospheric, especially including those set pieces such as the chessboard and the gravestones. I think that makes anyone in the queue line feel very immersed, and especially the fact that the queue line, sort of like the coaster is overhead, so it sort of gives everyone in the queue line a factor of like maybe, oh, this is what I'm about to experience, maybe increasing the fear levels there.
Yeah, and at the end of that queue line is the massive station building of the Vampire, which is one of my favourite bits of theming that the coaster has. So you go in and the music is booming. It's got a wonderful soundtrack that is always pumping, and there's lighting all around from the torches on the walls and the way the animatronic at the back is all lit up with a different lighting sequence. It's gone over a lot of changes over the years, but in its current iteration with the upgrades it got for this season, it is fantastic. And obviously that announcement goes off, just preparing everyone to exit the station and begin the on-ride.
Yeah, so now with a bit of the on-ride theming, I would personally think, and I'm sure Kai would agree, it's pretty average to be fair, nothing more than a few trees like sort of in and out of the forest. But I think one element that does really stand out is that fly over the plaza. I think that really makes people feel involved both on and off ride there. I mean, if you're on ride, you've got the feeling of sort of swooshing over people, and if you're like not on ride, then you've sort of got the feeling of this sort of vampire taking flight over you. I mean, it's really good there.
Yeah, so overall the Vampire is a fantastically themed coaster, great queue line, amazing station, decent on-ride theming. You know, it is one of the best themed coasters in the country.
I would definitely agree. So now talking about the enjoyment, one of the factors that really stood out for me was the fact it had 2 lift hills. I mean, this is fairly common within the arrow suspended coaster sort of family, as you like, but it definitely would add suspense and make people question on the ride, well, hang on, what's going on, why is there 2 lift hills?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, especially first time riders, are going to come to that second lift hill thinking it's over, but no, you know, they start to rise it and there's sort of a whole nother layout to come, which is really quite exciting. I did highlight that it's potentially got a lack of intensity, but I don't think it's too important with it being in a family park, and that's not what it's designed. It's not designed to be intense, and it's got its intense sections, don't get me wrong. It is obviously designed to be more sort of a swoopy, over the trees kind of flight.
Yeah, exactly. So personally, I think the enjoyment is very good there. But once again, the lack of intensity is because it's sort of meant for a family park. But we both came to a joint decision that the overall rating for the Vampire there would be a 4 out of a possible 5, so ranking pretty highly there.
Well, moving on to the other big coaster in the park, Dragon's Fury. Obviously, starting off with the theming, it's got a nice sort of plaza around its horseshoe turn that's in that Land of the Dragons area, and you can see a bit of off-ride from there. Generally off-ride theming Dragon's Fury, it's most of it's sort of plain between trees, but then where it swoops around the Land of the Dragons, it obviously takes elements from the Land of the Dragons themed area into it, so it is decent on-ride theming perspective.
Yeah, no, I would definitely agree with you there. I mean, you've also got that little archway that sort of enters you into the queue line area just there, which I think also adds an element of theming to the Land of the Dragons area there. Nothing too much though. I mean, sort of similar to the station really. It's nothing more than a few iron poles with a bit of corrugated metal, like sort of compare it to my garage really. But yeah, it's not a great station at all, and theming wise it's not too great. But
no, overall the station building is probably about as decent as Merlin's investment in Thorpe Park, isn't it? Let's be honest. But overall, it's an okay themed coaster. I wouldn't rank it anywhere near as high as the Vampire from a theming perspective, but it's decent.
Yeah. So on to the enjoyment factor. We've got, I would say it's pretty intense considering it is a ride made for a family park. So quite unsimilar there to the in comparison to the Vampire. But the one element I do find rather good is the back-to-back seating, because it sort of changes your run through each time. Because if you've got more weight on one side, you tend to spin more, or vice versa. So it really depends who you have sitting on the side of your train, really. But so that can really affect your like spin cycle and how fast you spin, the intensity of the ride.
Yeah, overall, Dragon's Fury is, it's a really nicely, very enjoyable coaster. I mean, it's very rideable because it is different every time you ride it. Let's be honest, it's quite intense for the park it's at, so I think it's a very enjoyable ride, and that's why overall we decided to give it a 3.5 out of 5.
So moving on to Tiger Rock now, we're going to talk about the theming. It's got a lovely station with the oriental vibe it's trying to convey there, with the Chinese lanterns and sort of like the printing onto the walls. Really adds to it there, especially that tunnel element into the on-ride section, where it's a nice little touch to the theming. But for me, what really stands out is those paths that are lovely themed around the ride itself, and it really adds to that, especially if you're not actually on the ride yourself. You can still get that full experience.
Yeah, I think overall Tiger Rock's just a great overall package. It's both tied into that Oriental and the Tiger theme. It's got the tigers walking around all the Oriental style buildings, the black and orange colour scheme prevalent throughout the area. One of my favourite bits of Tiger Rock, and this ties in especially to the theming, is looking at it from an off-ride perspective. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it is, and onto the enjoyment part there, I think it's a good fun little water ride. It gets you a bit wet, but yeah, it's enough to keep you going, isn't it, really?
Yeah, it's not very thrilling, but I think that's okay. It's not on the level of Tidal Wave or anything like that, but it's a nice little ride.
Yeah, and based on that, we both came to a conclusion of giving it a 3 out of a possible 5, so pretty average there on a ride perspective.
So on to Scorpion Express. This is a highly themed family coaster that was a re-theme of the Runaway Mine Train that opened back in 2014. I really like the theming for this coaster. It sort of makes you feel like you're immersed in this little mining village. I find that when you're in the area for Scorpion Express, you don't feel like you're in this big theme park. You really feel like you are in this little mining village, and that's because the whole thing is enclosed with these facades of these shops that are all around Scorpion Valley, which is the area it's set in. So it's basically like the minecart that goes all around it. It's really nicely themed. It's got a big metalwork scorpion animatronic in the middle of the ride, and obviously that huge fire effect that's one of the staple effects of the attraction. I love the theming on this ride, I'll be honest.
I would definitely agree with you there. Also, coming onto the queue-line section of the theming there, you've got some underground section which sort of intertwines you with the mining sort of village part of it, sort of quite a dusty vibe underneath the coaster there. Then you sort of open up again and go over this bridge which sort of goes directly over the coaster, then down into the station. I feel like that's really immersive and really well interacts there with the coaster, creating actually a bit of a head chopper there as well.
Yeah, overall, I mean, in conclusion for the theming, Scorpion Express is nicely done. As I said, it feels like you're in a little mining village. It does everything it needs to do, and for a little family coaster, it's fantastically themed.
Yeah, now on to the enjoyment. One thing as well, depending on the ride-up you get, you can actually get a faster run and you can actually get more laps. So maybe if you was to head down to Chessy on a less busy day, you might see yourself getting a slightly faster run with maybe some more laps there. Or if you're on a busier day, it would probably be the other way round, just to sort of get the queues flowing there. But yeah, that's just a fun little thing there, because me and Kai actually experienced that. We had a few more laps and we just sort of noticed that there was a slight difference when it was less busy.
Yeah, the ride's got some great head choppers, and it is really re-rideable due to that element that George mentioned, where depending on the op, the ride can be slightly different. But the head choppers are fantastic. In essence, unfortunately, it is still a really basic coaster. It's just a simple Mac-powered coaster that goes around in an oval layout. So in essence, it's very basic, but because of the theming and the elements they've added to it, it is quite enjoyable. So because of that, overall, we did decide to give it a 3 out of 5.
So lastly, moving on to Gruffalo's River Ride Adventure, we're going to talk about the theming. It's class on-ride theming with the nice and large imposing set pieces. It very much unfolds like a book there, especially with that large Gruffalo scene towards the end there. Really makes very immersive feeling there for like the on-ride people there.
Yeah, the on-ride theming in the Gruffalo is fantastic, and the interior queue line is really nice as well. You sort of see the boarding area. It's got all sort of bushes on the ceiling. It's really nice on the interior queue line. The exterior queue line is pretty poor, I'll be honest. It's very basic. They have tried to add a couple of elements, but it's nothing that's going to cut it for me, really. And all it really looks out on is the Wild Woods area. Now, I do just want to quickly note that the Gruffalo can go and fuck itself for existing, because it turned Transylvania into the Wild Woods, and neither of us are too happy about that at all.
No, definitely not. Now moving on to the enjoyment factor, we talk about how slow the ride actually is and how sort of non-re-rideable it is. But I would say it's meant to be like this, because you're meant to take in that feeling, you're meant to take in the immersion of the ride and sort of experience the story as you like. So I would say that there's nothing wrong with that, and that's why it's meant to be there, as it is in a family park overall.
Yeah, so overall the Gruffalo's got some great theming, especially on the interior, but it isn't very re-rideable at all. So it's got a couple of different factors going for it, but overall we decided to give it a 3.5 out of 5.
So there we have it. There is mine and Kai's full opinions there on those 5 contenders there for the best ride at Chessington, but really, which one is it? We did have quite a bit of a discussion on this, and we did come to the conclusion that based on theming, enjoyment and the overall rating, that the Vampire did indeed come out on top. This was indeed a joint decision, and we both did agree with this. And personally, I mean, for both of us, I would say it's definitely due to that theming, both on and off ride. So once again, I think it's that plaza flyover that really does it there for the Vampire. And the prestige of the coaster. So I mean, it's been there for years, and it's really sort of held that park together there. It's been one of the sort of the flagship attractions for the park, and it's just that's really what's made it come out on top today. I mean, let us know what your opinion is, what you would have put as the best, or even if there's a different top 5 you would have put in there. But that is indeed what we have come out with for today's video.
Well, so that's it. The Vampire has come out on top. Do you agree? As George said, let us know in the comments below. But for us, it was the Vampire, and I'm happy to see that. So thanks for watching again. I know the times are difficult right now, but we've got a lot of content on the way that isn't the normal At The Parks content. We're actually going to have a little update coming out in the next couple of weeks that should explain what we're supposed to be sort of uploading during these times. But for now, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.